In this episode, we are going to tackle the topic of cosigning, specifically answering the question, can you have a cosigner on a mortgage loan? While this is an option that is worth considering, cosigning on a mortgage is not without its risks. As we explore this question, we will discuss the benefits and drawbacks of cosigning. We'll also provide tips on getting pre-approved when using a cosigner and what to expect during the application process. By the end of this episode, you will have a better understanding of what cosigning entails and what you should consider before opting for this arrangement. If you're a first-time home buyer or someone who's struggling to get pre-approved on your own, this video is especially relevant to you. Don't miss out on this valuable information. So what is a cosigner? A cosigner is someone who comes in and joins in on the application to help our main applicant get approved for their home loan. Typically, this is going to be a parent or a close relative or a friend of the family, someone who has a vested interest in that main applicant. This is one of the criteria that many investors are going to look for. Is there a relationship between the main applicant and the person coming in to co-sign for the loan? So how does a cosigner help? Well, cosigner is a second applicant on the mortgage application. So predominantly the main applicant is not strong enough to be pre-approved on their own. They may be a first-time home buyer applying by themselves, or maybe they have some struggles from a credit or income standpoint that is preventing them from getting pre-approved on their own. So the cosigner or co-applicant is going to come with them on that application to strengthen that profile to obtain that loan approval. Benefits of having a cosigner are bringing in these additional items to strengthen that loan quality. An investor is going to have a certain set of criteria that they're going to want to see before they will expose themselves to risk on lending money on a home. And the benefit of having a cosigner is it helps strengthen that profile. Having a second borrower on an application is always a compensating factor to an investor. That may bring in higher income to help lower a debt to income ratio calculation. They may show more in assets that shows that they have more money in reserves to help strengthen that there's financial stability behind both applicants after the loan closes. Another responsibility that a cosigner has is that they will have this mortgage loan as a trade line on their credit report. They are responsible for that payment, and it will be reflected as such in their credit report. So if their main applicant fails to make a payment in time and there is a late payment, that would adversely affect that cosigner. So making sure there's a strong understanding of what the responsibilities are there is crucial to making this decision on whether you want to have a co-applicant on your mortgage or if you're being asked to co-sign on a loan as well. A concern that some co-signers have is, will that affect my ability to get approved for another loan down the road if I want to? The short answer is yes, it would, because it's a debt that they have to qualify. But there is a workaround for this. Now, what most investors are going to do when an applicant is applying for a new mortgage debt, if they have co-signed on another debt, they have an ability to offset that debt, which means if the main applicant that they co-signed for can prove 12 months in a row that they made that payment without any assistance from that cosigner can obtain that documentation and offset that liability with their mortgage advisor as they move forward. Now, does this apply for a car loan or credit cards or other types of financing? You would have to ask those investors or those investor types what their requirements are. Typically, when you're going to get pre-approved for another mortgage, when you have co-signed for somebody else, if you can prove 12 months of payments from that other party, you can offset that debt. Another question that we get quite often is, how do you get a cosigner off of a mortgage once you've kind of gotten everything established? So you may have a first-time home buyer that needed some help to get pre-approved. They bring on a cosigner. Now their status has improved to the point where they can handle that payment on paper on their own. They could qualify now on their own, but say it's a year or 2 years later. How do you get this cosigner off of that mortgage? Typically, you're going to have to close out that loan, which means you're going to have to refinance that loan or sell that home to close out that loan completely. That is truly the only way to take a cosigner off of that mortgage note. This is truly a discussion that you want to have with someone who's going to co-sign so they know the benefits and drawbacks for helping out that main applicant. They will be responsible for that mortgage payment if the main applicant fails to do so. They will have that listed on their credit, and it will be a debt that they would have to qualify for at a later time unless that person can show 12 months of payments on their own. And they would have to wait until that loan was closed before they could be removed from that loan application, that mortgage note. Now, a benefit for a cosigner is that they would have a mortgage trade line on their credit. If it's performing well, that's going to give them a credit boost. Also, they would most likely be added to title, which would give them leverage in that scenario, so to speak. If for some reason that main applicant failed to make payments on that home or was struggling financially to stay up with the obligation, then the cosigner would still have legal rights to that property and would be able to come in and help leverage that piece out. Some great tips to consider when you are adding a cosigner is make sure that you get your lender involved as soon as possible. You want to have them have a direct conversation with that cosigner so they know exactly what support documents are needed for the loan approval. Now, the upside of this is it may reduce the amount of documentation that is needed for the main applicant. There are even situations where the main applicant may not have to provide any type of income documentation or asset documentation based on the strength of that cosigner. You want to remember they are a co-applicant on there, so both of you are together in that loan approval. So we've had instances where maybe a parent co-signs for a child who maybe is in college. They have a credit profile that would help them be on the loan, but they don't have a job and they don't have funds for a down payment or things of that nature. But the parent will come in as a co-applicant and they'll be strong enough to allow them to purchase that home. Maybe they're just starting a job, a part-time job that can pay for that mortgage, or maybe they're going to bring in some friends and have roommates that would help them make sure that mortgage payment is paid. There are some great creative solutions with using a cosigner, but you want to get your lender involved to make sure you know those details. There are a lot of great pros and cons or benefits or drawbacks to having a cosigner on a mortgage. You really want to make sure that you spend the time discussing the drawbacks and the benefits with anyone who's going to be a cosigner for you on their mortgage. I also want to know what the responsibilities are going to be from a credit aspect, the payment responsibilities, and being placed on title. And what is the process for removing them when that time comes? Making sure everyone is on the same page is going to be the crucial part to going on to you, whether you want to decide to use that cosigner or not. If you ever have questions, you know we're here to help.